My name is Vivian, and I have reached my breaking point. After everything I've done for my son, after all the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the 30 years of putting him first, this is how he repays me? By humiliating me on what should have been one of the proudest days of my life. I was pushed aside like I was nothing, like I was just some distant relative they felt obligated to invite. Well, I've had enough. You think I'm just going to smile and take it? No. My son and his precious new wife are about to learn that actions have consequences. They'll regret the day they decided to disrespect me. Before we continue, if you enjoy family drama and real-life stories about standing up for yourself, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. My relationship with my son David had always been special. I raised him as a single mother after his father walked out when he was just 4 years old. Every school play, every baseball game, every scraped knee and broken heart, I was there always, just the two of us against the world. When David graduated from college, I was the one who stood in the audience with tears streaming down my face. I had worked 3 jobs to make sure he could attend the university of his dreams, often going without proper meals myself, just to ensure the tuition payments were made on time. But I never complained. That's what mothers do, right? We sacrifice. We give everything. 4 years ago, David met Jessica at a mutual friend's birthday party. From the beginning, something about her rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't anything obvious that I could point to, just a feeling, a subtle coldness whenever I was around. The way she would smile at me, but her eyes remained distant. How she would always steer conversations away from my contributions to David's life. "Mom, you're just being paranoid," David would tell me whenever I tried to express my concerns. "Jessica thinks you're great. She's just shy around new people." But 3 years of dating didn't make me any less new to her. Still, I tried. Lord knows I tried. I invited them over for dinner regularly. I remembered her birthday with thoughtful gifts. I even attended her family gatherings when invited, making small talk with her mother, Catherine, who seemed to share her daughter's talent for artificial warmth. When David announced their engagement, I forced the brightest smile I could manage. "I'm so happy for you both," I said, and I meant it, because despite my reservations about Jessica, my son's happiness has always been my priority. "We're thinking about a spring wedding,"
Jessica said,
already scrolling through venue options on her phone. "Something elegant but intimate." "That sounds lovely," I replied. "I'd be happy to help with the planning in any way I can." Jessica's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's sweet, but my mom and I have it covered. She's really good at this sort of thing." And that was how it began. The systematic exclusion from one of the most important events in my son's life. Every time I offered suggestions or asked about wedding plans, I was politely but firmly shut down. "Jessica and Catherine have a vision," David would explain apologetically. "It's easier to just let them handle it." "Easier for whom?" I wanted to ask, but I swallowed my hurt and reminded myself that this wasn't about me. This was David's big day. 6 months before the wedding, I received an unexpected call from David. "Non, I need to talk to you about something important." My heart raced with anxiety. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," he assured me. "It's just, Jessica and I have been looking at our budget, and we're coming up short for the honeymoon. We found this amazing package to the Maldives, but..." I didn't hesitate. "How much do you need?" The relief in his voice was palpable. "Are you sure, Mom? It's a lot." "David, this is your honeymoon. I want it to be special." 2 days later, I transferred $15,000 to his account. It was most of my savings, money I'd been putting aside for years for my retirement. But seeing the joy in my son's face when he called to thank me made it worth every penny. "You're the best, Mom," he said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words would echo ironically in my mind just a few months later. As the wedding date approached, my involvement remained peripheral at best. Jessica and Catherine selected everything from the flowers to the table settings, without so much as asking my opinion. The one time I ventured to suggest a particular cake flavor that David had loved since childhood, Catherine laughed it off. "Oh, Vivian, chocolate raspberry is so predictable." We're going with the lavender-infused vanilla with elderflower buttercream. It's what all the high-end weddings are featuring this season. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. The night of the rehearsal dinner, I arrived early to help set up, only to find Catherine already directing the staff like a general commanding troops. "Vivian, good you're here," she said, barely looking up from her clipboard. "Would you mind picking up the place cards from the calligrapher? They were supposed to be delivered an hour ago." "Of course," I said, trying to ignore the fact that I'd just been relegated to errand girl at my own son's rehearsal dinner. "Where is the calligrapher studio?" "It's about 40 minutes away in Oak Ridge,"
Catherine replied,
already turning her attention back to the flower arrangements. "The address is on my phone. Let me just." I waited patiently as she scrolled through her contacts, all while directing the waitstaff on proper champagne pouring technique.
"Here," she finally said, showing me the address.
"And do hurry back. We need those cards set up before guests arrive." I spent the next hour and a half fighting through rush hour traffic, only to discover upon arrival that the place cards weren't quite ready. "Another 20 minutes, the harried calligrapher promised. By the time I returned to the venue, most of the guests had already arrived, including David and Jessica. "Mom, where was you?" David asked, a hint of annoyance in his voice. "We were about to start without you." "I was picking up the place cards," I explained, trying to keep the hurt from my voice.
"Catherine asked me to."
"Apple," he said, his expression softening slightly.
"Well, you're here now."
"That's what matters." The rehearsal dinner passed in a blur of toasts and well wishes. I watched as Catherine circulated among the guests, introducing herself as mother of the bride, with such pride you'd think she'd invented the concept. Meanwhile, I sat at a table with some of David's distant cousins who spent most of the evening discussing their recent kitchen renovations. When I finally managed to get a moment alone with David, he was already 3 glasses of champagne into the evening. "Having fun, sweetie?" I asked, straightening his slightly crooked tie. "The best," he grinned, giving me a one-armed hug. "Tay, I've been meaning to talk to you about tomorrow." "What about tomorrow?"
I asked, a flutter of anxiety returning.
"So, we had a last-minute change with the seating arrangements at the ceremony,"
he began,
not quite meeting my eyes. "Catherine's sister and her family decided to come after all, which is great, but it kind of complicated things." "David," I interrupted, suddenly feeling cold despite the warm evening. "What are you trying to tell me?" He shifted uncomfortably. "We had to move some people around, and well, you won't be sitting in the front row anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I won't be in the front row? At my only son's wedding? Where will I be sitting?" "The second row," he said quickly. "It's still a great seat, Mom. You'll be able to see everything." "And Vul?"
I asked, already knowing the answer.
"Will be sitting in my place?" David's gaze dropped to his shoes. "Catherine will be in the front with Jessica's dad. It just makes sense since they're still married and, you know." I didn't trust myself to speak for several seconds. When I finally did, my voice was barely above a whisper. "I understand. You're right. It makes perfect sense. Mom."
"It's fine, David. Really."
"I should go mingle with the other guests. It's getting late." I walked away before he could see the tears welling in my eyes. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and allowed myself exactly 2 minutes of silent crying before splashing cold water on my face and reapplying my makeup. This wasn't the time for a scene. Tomorrow was my son's wedding day, and I would be damned if I ruined it with my hurt feelings. But as I lay awake that night in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling, a cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. The second row. After everything, all the years, all the sacrifices, all the love, I was being placed in the second row like an afterthought. Like someone who hadn't held her son through fevers and nightmares. Like someone who hadn't worked herself to exhaustion to give him every opportunity in life. And my seat, my rightful place as mother of the groom, was being given to Catherine, who had done nothing but sweep in with her elderflower buttercream and her calligraphy connections to take over a wedding she had no business controlling. Morning arrived with no improvement to my mood. If anything, a night of fitful sleep had only hardened my resolve. I wasn't going to make a scene, but I also wasn't going to pretend this treatment was acceptable. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. at a picturesque vineyard overlooking rolling hills. I arrived early, hoping for a few minutes alone with David before everything began. "He's getting ready in the groom's suite," an overly perky wedding coordinator informed me. "But he asked not to be disturbed right now. Pre-wedding jitters, you know." "I'm his mother," I said flatly. "I understand," she replied with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But those were his instructions. Perhaps you could wait in the garden with the other guests? We're serving mimosas." Dismissed again. I wandered into the garden, declining the offered mimosa, and found a quiet bench away from the growing crowd of well-dressed attendees. From my vantage point, I could see Catherine bustling in and out of the bridal suite, arms laden with garment bags and boxes, mother of the bride taking center stage. At 1:30, guests began to be seated for the ceremony. I waited until the last possible moment before making my way to the seating area. Sure enough, there was Catherine, resplendent in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, being escorted to the front row by one of the groomsmen. She caught my eye as she passed and gave me a small, triumphant smile that confirmed everything I had suspected. This wasn't about wedding traditions or practical considerations. This was about putting me in my place. I took my seat in the second row, painfully aware of the curious glances from those who knew I was the groom's mother. The older couple next to me whispered something to each other, their eyes darting toward me with poorly concealed pity. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I have to admit. David looked handsome in his tuxedo, his face transforming with joy when Jessica appeared at the end of the aisle. She was stunning in her gown, which I was seeing for the first time along with everyone else, having not been invited to a single dress fitting. As they exchanged vows, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride in the man my son had become, happiness for his obvious joy, but also a deep aching sense of loss. Something fundamental had shifted, and I wasn't just losing my son to his new wife. I was being actively pushed out of his life. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Catherine was the first person they embraced after their kiss. I waited my turn, which came after Jessica's father, her 3 bridesmaids, and even the best man. When David finally hugged me, it felt rushed, perfunctory. "Beautiful ceremony," I managed, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Thanks, Mom," he replied, already looking over my shoulder for the next person to greet. The reception was held in a beautifully decorated barn on the vineyard property. My table assignment? Far in the back, near the kitchen doors, with David's work colleagues and their plus ones. People who were virtual strangers to me. From my seat, I could barely see the head table where David and Jessica sat, flanked by her parents, and the wedding party. I had assumed, foolishly it seemed, that as mother of the groom, I would be seated at the head table, or at least at a table of honor. Another miscalculation on my part. Throughout dinner, I watched as Catherine made her rounds, accepting congratulations and compliments on the beautiful wedding she had planned. I picked up my elderflower-infused whatever it was and sipped my wine, nodding politely as the young couple next to me discussed their recent trip to Bali. When it came time for speeches, Jessica's father went first, followed by the maid of honor and best man. I waited for someone to invite me to speak. Surely the mother of the groom would be given an opportunity to toast the couple? But the DJ transitioned directly from the final speech to the first dance. I excused myself from the table and headed for the restroom, needing a moment of privacy. In the elegant powder room, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed older, diminished somehow. Was this really what my relationship with my son had become? Had I been relegated to the role of second-tier relative? Important enough to invite, but not important enough to acknowledge? As I was about to leave the restroom, I overheard 2 women entering, their voices slightly slurred from champagne. "Did you see where they put his mom? All the way in the back by the kitchen. That's cold." "I know." Catherine totally pushed her out. "Did you hear what happened with the ceremony seating?" "No, what?" Apparently, the original plan had both mothers in the front row, but Catherine threw a fit at the last minute. Said something about wanting symmetry, since Jessica's dad was alone on his side. So David asked his mom to move to the second row. "That's awful. Did she make a scene?" "No, that's the thing. She just quietly moved. My cousin works with David, and he said his mom paid for their honeymoon too. 15 grand for a trip to the Maldives." "Well, And this is how they thank her? By humiliating her at the wedding. I pushed the door open, causing both women to jump guiltily. They mumbled apologies and scurried out, leaving me alone with this new information. Catherine had engineered my exclusion deliberately, and David had gone along with it. The hurt that had been simmering all day crystallized into something harder, colder. I returned to the reception, just as the party was hitting its stride. The dance floor was packed, the alcohol was flowing freely, and no one seemed to notice or care that I was standing alone at the edge of the room. I spotted David dancing with Catherine, twirling her as she laughed delightedly. In that moment, a decision crystallized in my mind. I found my purse and slipped outside to the parking area, where I sat in my car and made a phone call. "Hello, Sunset Travel Agency? This is Vivian Mitchell. I need to cancel a reservation I made." "Yes, it's for David and Jessica Mitchell. A honeymoon package to the Maldives, departing next Sunday." "Yes, I'm aware of the cancellation policy." "That's fine." "Yes, please refund the amount to my original form of payment." "No, I don't need to book something else at this time. Thank you." A sense of calm settled over me as I ended the call. Some might call it petty revenge. I called it justice. I considered leaving the reception then and there, but something made me return. Perhaps I wanted to witness the moment when they discovered what I'd done. Perhaps I simply refused to be driven away from my own son's wedding. The next few hours passed in a blur. I danced with a few of David's friends who took pity on me. I made small talk with distant relatives. I posed for photographs when instructed, smiling mechanically for the camera. And I watched Catherine hold court, basking in her role as mother of the bride, queen of the day. Near the end of the evening, during a rare lull in the festivities, David found me sitting alone at my table.
"Hey, Mom,"
he said, sliding into an empty chair beside me. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly mussed from dancing. "Having a good time?" I looked at my son, my beloved only child, for whom I would have moved mountains, and felt a profound sadness. "It's been quite a day,"
I replied neutrally.
"Yeah, it has." He grinned, oblivious to my distress. "Everything turned out perfect, don't you think? Jessica is over the moon." "I'm glad," I said. "And I'm sure you're both looking forward to your honeymoon."
"When do you leave again?"
"Next Sunday,"
he replied, his eyes lighting up.
"We can't wait. Mom, I can't thank you enough for that gift. 2 weeks in the Maldives. It's going to be incredible." I smiled thinly. I'm sure it would have been. Something in my tone must have finally penetrated his wedding day euphoria. "What do you mean, would have been?" "David, I need to ask you something.
And I want an honest answer.
Was it your idea to move me to the second row at the ceremony?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Mom, we've been through this. It was a last-minute change." "Catherine's sister. Don't lie to me,"
I interrupted quietly. "I know what really happened."
"Catherine didn't want me in the front row, and you chose to accommodate her rather than stand up for me." "That's not fair," he protested, though his eyes slid away from mine. "It wasn't that big a deal. It was just 1 row back." "Just 1 row," I repeated. "Just like it wasn't a big deal to seat me as far from the head table as physically possible, or to not include me in a single aspect of the wedding planning, or to not even give me a moment to toast my only son at his wedding."
"Mom, you're being dramatic."
"It was a busy day and some things just
"Happened that way."
No one was trying to exclude you." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Let me ask you something else. If our positions were reversed, if Catherine had raised Jessica alone, sacrificed everything for her, and then was treated the way I've been treated today, would you still think it was no big deal?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I canceled your honeymoon,"
I said quietly.
His eyes widened in shock. "You what?"
"I called the travel agency and canceled the reservation."
"The money has been refunded to my account." "None." His voice rose in anger and disbelief. "Why would you do that? Are you trying to punish us?" "I'm not trying to punish you, David. I'm simply no longer willing to finance my own humiliation." "This is insane," he hissed, mindful of the nearby guests who were beginning to take notice of our intense conversation. "You can't just cancel our honeymoon because your feelings got hurt." "My feelings didn't get hurt, David. I was deliberately disrespected, and pushed aside on a day that should have been joyful for both of us. And it wasn't just today. It's been happening since you and Jessica got engaged. So this is about Jessica? His face flushed with anger. You've never given her a chance. You've always been looking for reasons to dislike her. This isn't about Jessica.
I corrected him.
It's about you. Your choices. Your priorities. My priority today was making sure my wife had the perfect wedding day, he snapped. Is that so wrong? No,
I replied sadly.
What's wrong is that you seem to think her perfect day required my imperfect one. What's wrong is that you've forgotten who has been there for you every day of your life. Not just on special occasions when there are photographers present. Catherine chose that moment to approach our table, her radar for drama apparently having alerted her to the tension between us. Is everything all right over here? She asked, placing a proprietary hand on David's shoulder. They're about to do the bouquet toss, David. Jessica's looking for you. David stood abruptly. We're fine. Just having a little chat. Catherine's gaze flicked dismissively over me before returning to David.
Well, don't keep the bride waiting.
It's bad luck. As he turned to follow her, I said quietly, David. He paused, looking back at me with a mixture of anger and confusion. I love you,
I said simply.
I always have, and I always will. But love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be treated as if you don't matter. He hesitated for a moment, something flashing in his eyes that might have been understanding, or perhaps just impatience. Then Catherine tugged at his arm, and he was gone, swallowed up by the crowd of well-wishers gathering for the final moments of the reception. I stayed until the very end, watching as David and Jessica departed amid a shower of rose petals, climbing into a vintage car decorated with just married signs. I even joined the line of guests waving goodbye, though I doubt they noticed me among the crowd. Back at my hotel room, I finally allowed myself to cry, not the controlled, quiet tears of the rehearsal dinner bathroom, but deep, racking sobs that felt torn from somewhere primal within me. I cried for the little boy who once couldn't fall asleep without my goodnight kiss. I cried for the teenager who brought me breakfast in bed every Mother's Day. I cried for the young man who had once written in a college essay that I was his hero. And I cried for myself, for the mother who had somehow become dispensable. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages and missed calls, from David, from Jessica, even from Catherine. I ignored them all. Instead, I checked out of the hotel, drove home, and booked myself a spa weekend at a nearby resort. I wasn't going to the Maldives, but I could at least give myself a fraction of the relaxation I had gifted to my son and his wife. It was 3 days before I finally answered one of David's calls. How could you do this to us?
He demanded without preamble.
Do you have any idea how embarrassed we were when we showed up at the airport and found out our honeymoon had been canceled? Jessica cried for hours. I'm sorry you were embarrassed, I replied, keeping my voice level. I can only imagine how awful that must have felt. Is that supposed to be funny? Some kind of ironic punishment? Lon, you need to transfer the money back. We can still salvage part of the trip. No, David, I don't think I will.
This is childish, he exploded.
All this because you had to sit in the second row at the ceremony. If it was such a small thing, why couldn't I sit in the front row? I countered. If seating doesn't matter, why did Catherine insist that I be moved? Don't bring Catherine into this. She's been nothing but nice to you. I had to laugh at that. David, she's been undermining me since day one. She took over your wedding, pushed me to the sidelines, and you let her do it. You chose her over me at every turn. That's not true, he protested, but with less conviction. It is true. And you know what? That's your right. You're an adult. You can choose who you want in your life, and how much influence they have. But I also have choices. And I choose not to spend my retirement savings on people who don't respect me. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words and emotions. I love you, I continued when he didn't speak. And when you're ready to have a relationship where I'm not an afterthought, where I'm valued as your mother and not just as a checkbook, I'll be here. But things need to change. You're giving me an ultimatum? His voice was incredulous. I'm setting boundaries, I corrected. Something I should have done a long time ago. The conversation ended soon after, with nothing resolved and the future of our relationship uncertain. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from David or Jessica. Through mutual friends, I learned they had scraped together enough money for a modest few days at a beach resort a few hours from home. Not quite the Maldives, but a honeymoon nonetheless. Catherine apparently had tried to step in and pay for a replacement trip, but her finances weren't as flexible as she liked to pretend.
A small petty part of me took satisfaction in that.
2 months after the wedding, just as I was beginning to fear that the rift between David and me might be permanent, I received a text message. "Can we talk? In person." We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. David looked different somehow, older, more serious. The newlywed glow had faded, replaced by something that looked like hard-won wisdom. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began after we had exchanged awkward greetings. "About the wedding, about our relationship, about everything." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I was wrong," he said simply. "Not about everything, but about a lot of things. I let Jessica's mom take over, and I didn't stand up for you when I should have. I was so caught up in trying to make everyone happy that I ended up hurting the person who has always been there for me." The lump in my throat made it difficult to speak.
"Thank you for saying that,"
"I'm not just saying it.
he insisted.
I mean it. And I've talked to Jessica about it too."
"Sue."
She didn't realize how much Catherine was overstepping. Or maybe she did and she just didn't want to rock the boat. Either way, we've had some pretty intense conversations about family boundaries. "And how did those conversations go?" I asked cautiously. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Let's just say Catherine won't be dictating our holiday plans anytime soon." Jessica finally saw what I was too blind to see, that her mother's help comes with strings attached. We talked for hours that afternoon, really talked, in a way we hadn't since before he met Jessica. He told me about the challenges of early marriage, about the arguments he and Jessica had had about family dynamics, about his growing realization that the patterns established during their engagement and wedding had set unhealthy precedents for their relationship.
"We're working on it," he assured me. "Jessica wants to have a better relationship with you. A real one, not just polite small talk at holidays.
And she understands now why you did what you did with the honeymoon." "I'm willing to try if she is,"
I said.
"But David, I need you to understand something. I don't regret canceling that trip.
I regret that it came to that point,
but I don't regret standing up for myself." He nodded slowly.
"I get that now. And honestly, Mom,
that modest little honeymoon we ended up having was probably better for us in the long run. We had to figure things out together, without a fancy resort or luxury experiences to distract us from the real work of being married. We parted with a hug that felt different from any we'd shared in years, tighter, more honest, healing. The road back to a healthy relationship wasn't smooth or straightforward. There were setbacks and old patterns that tried to reassert themselves. Catherine, in particular, did not take her reduced influence gracefully.
But slowly, surely things improved.
Jessica and I found common ground beyond our connection to David. We discovered a shared interest in gardening, of all things, and began exchanging plant cuttings and advice. David made a point of having regular one-on-one time with me, reviving our tradition of monthly breakfast dates that had fallen by the wayside during his engagement.
6 months after our coffee shop reconciliation,
they invited me over for dinner. As we chatted over dessert, Jessica suddenly grew serious.
"Vivian,"
she said, using my first name, which still felt strange but was a step toward a more equal adult relationship.
"We have something for you."
She nodded to David, who pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to me. Inside was a check for $15,000, the exact amount I had given them for the honeymoon. "We've been saving," David explained as I stared at the check in shock. "Every extra dollar, every bonus, every tax refund. We wanted to pay you back." "You didn't have to do this," I said, emotion making my voice tremble. "Yes, we did,"
Jessica insisted.
"It wasn't right what happened. You deserved better." I looked at my daughter-in-law, really looked at her, and saw something I had missed before. A young woman trying to find her footing in a complicated family dynamic, sometimes making mistakes but ultimately wanting to do the right thing. "Thank you," I said, addressing them both but holding Jessica's gaze. "This means a lot to me." David cleared his throat. "There's something else too." From under the table, he produced a glossy brochure. "We want you to come with us to Santorini next summer. All 3 of us." A do-over of sorts. We're calling it our family moon.
Jessica added with a tentative smile.
If that's not too cheesy. I laughed through tears that were, for once, born of joy rather than pain. It's definitely cheesy, but I love it. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of exclusion at the wedding, the difficult decision to cancel the honeymoon, the tense weeks of separation, and now this unexpected gift of reconciliation and growth. I had lost something, it was true, the uncomplicated mother-son relationship of the past. But I had gained something too, a more honest, balanced relationship with my adult son, and the beginnings of a genuine connection with my daughter-in-law. More importantly, I had reclaimed my own sense of worth. By refusing to accept disrespect, even from those I loved most, I had taught not only them but myself an important lesson. That love without respect isn't really love at all. The wedding seat I had lost turned out to be a small price to pay for the stronger, healthier family bonds we were now building together. Bonds based on mutual respect, honest communication, and the recognition that every member of the family, mothers included, deserves a place of honor at the table.